appreciate some interaction from the audience, that's a crowd as well. And we're giving you this opportunity to interact with the thought leaders that are coming and presenting today. So you can go and register yourself for interacting with them. We're going to have a roundtable session in the next room, that is the adjacent room right here, and you can go and sign up with Laila Surti, who will be taking your registrations. Now, ladies and gentlemen, moving on, we have with us Rishabh Sahay. He's a filmmaker with a strong design background, sound technical expertise, global vision, and natural flair. He has directed advertorial film content for some of the largest brands that include Raymond, Coos London, Adidas, Amazon, Tarun Tahiliani, and many others. He has recently written, directed, and co-produced a fiction web series for Plus Entertainment, the cast of which includes Devyendu Sharma, Gauhar Khan, and Piyush Mishra, amongst the others. So, ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Rishabh Sahay.
Hi everybody, I hope your Sunday is sailing well. As you can see, all those three people are me. And I'm going to be discussing social paradigm shifts. Now, just let me tell you a little bit about myself. My work entails a bit of cross-pollination between design and cinema. She was kind to introduce me, fair enough, so I guess I'll just move on to the presentation. So what is a paradigm shift? It is a revolution, a transformation, a sort of metamorphosis that just doesn't happen, but rather is driven by agents of change. If we look around today, what do we see? We see a huge influx of all kinds of demography in a country which is so diverse as our own. The world, we all know, we use the term global village a lot, but we are hyper-connected. How do we address that? Through our personal expressions, whether it is through art, whether it is through design, whether it is through cinema. I think there is a commonality that we all share as creators. I think there is a place where we all converge, and I hope to be able to touch upon that place today. Dynamic population. Now we all know that today we live in a world which is, at least our country, it's exploding with new people, with new generational influx. Now, in about a decade from now, we are going to be 1 billion more people globally. And out of those 1 billion, the largest growth rate is predicted to be people between the age of 58 and 70, the elderly. Now, how do we manage that? How do we bring stories that we have lived into design, into consumerism? How do we make our own experiences valuable? How do we grow empathy? Now, these are some things which I'm just going to share a small story. When I was a kid, I would sleep next to my mother and I would cling onto her necklace, and that is the memory that I have of sleeping sound as a baby. Now that necklace still exists. It might not have been the most expensive necklace, I don't know, to be honest, but the provenance attached to that piece of jewelry is absolutely it's probably the most important piece of jewelry that I will ever imagine. I will treasure that piece of jewelry when my mother is gone, because that's the memory, that's the story I have associating my life with it. Can we bring that provenance to everything that we do? Can we bring some sort of emotive quality? Can we bring stories to everything, to everybody, to this dynamic population which is like marching ants, running helter-skelter? Every day we meet people. Can we try and pause and share our own stories? Can we try and maybe build a pact with somebody through a product, through a jewel stone, through a film? Now here's another image of which is as dynamic as the previous one. It's very directionless. If you see that everybody is swimming in a direction, trying to get to the other end. I don't know if it reminds you of your life, it reminds me of mine for sure. We don't know which side we want to end up on. And we take pride in being global citizens. We take pride. I was just talking to Narendra, he was telling me how he spends half his time in Bangalore and half his time in Bombay, and I marveled at his efficacy of being able to juggle between this dual city life. And how many of us are doing that today? I'm spending my Sunday with you, not golfing around. And I'm very glad that you guys are sitting here listening to me. I'm going to go and pretend that it's Sunday by after 4 p.m. Now this kind of duality that we have, that we everyday experience, is a large part of being a global citizen. Now, does that, I want to pose a question to all of you, does that in any way invigorate a change in the way you design? Does that invigorate a change in the way you feel your culture, especially with the richness that we have around ourselves? Anybody who would want to just interact with me on this, I'd like to be spoken to as well. Please.
Sorry, could you just repeat what you said again? The inspiration of what, sorry?
Just the multifaceted nature of our lives today.
Yeah.
Number of things that we do, the kind of multitasking that we're doing. Does that change the way we function as creators? Is that multifocal nature? How does it affect you?
I think it does. I think you take these things and everything. You take inspirations from everything in your life. I believe if you're designing or if you're creative, you just take from life experience. Everything you do in life should experience whether you're designing or whether you're coming up with something. I know I take my life experiences when I'm putting together shoots or concepts, whatever. So I do think that you get inspiration from your surroundings. I definitely believe that.
I will answer that with an anecdote.
Please do.
Everybody knows about Bombay Times, right? Yeah, everybody knows about Bombay Times. 12 years ago, Bombay Times had this front page article that said, who are the top 10 party people in this city? Page 3, right? You know page 3 on Bombay Times, right? And I was number 2.
Why am I not surprised?
I missed the first one. I got the second one. But the idea was, then I used to go to 4 different parties in one night, meet 4 different people, 4 different kinds of people, 4 different groups of people with 4 different stories. To me, all those parties were listening posts. To me, it gave me an idea of what different people in this city are thinking about one subject from a different perspective. And as an artist, that is what Zeitgeist is about. It's about bringing that spirit, which most people who live in silos are not able to connect to other people. And as a designer, that's what you do. You bring those stories together in a way most people never assume or presumed it would ever be.
I couldn't agree more. I think he's hit the nail on the head. Even today when we sit on that table, we come from different cultural backgrounds. Even as Indians, we come from different anchorages. And that kind of, that totalitarian view that we get after we interact with each other, I think is a very enriching experience. And that is what, in my view, should,
No, in connecting to what Narendra was saying, I think that especially nowadays, if you think yourself as a designer or an educator or a thinker, it is necessary to consider yourself a global citizen. You cannot only look at what surrounds you, because that doesn't allow you to be the best of what you can be. And you should not call yourself a successful designer unless you create this network of people around you which come from different backgrounds, from different cultures, and you understand what's going on around the world, because it's not more like what's happening in your town, your country, it's what's happening at a global level. And yeah, so I completely agree with that.
Fair enough. Let me move on to the next one. So now, this is a funny one, because there is a lot of data that we consume every day. Sometimes through coerced WhatsApp messages. In our country, Paolo, I don't know if you get these messages, but if you don't forward it to 10 people, you'll have a bad day. So there is a lot of information that we're sharing without really corroborating the actuality or the intensity of how and why it was created. There was a time when we used to go to college library, find the same piece of article in 3 different magazines, in different books, and understand what was being tried to be said. Now here we are, receiving as a mega receiving radar. We are consuming, and then we are regurgitating. You go to a doctor, patients know their disease better than the doctor. They already Googled their symptoms. They already know what's ailing them. They already know what they should be having, but they still go to, thankfully, we still go to the doctor. That is why, if you guys are design doctors, if you guys are business doctors, if you guys are people who are creating a ripple in the jewelry industry, I'm making a film trying to express myself. There are designers there. All of us are posed with new questions every day. Our consumers, our receivers, people who interact with us are informed. Whether in the right way or the wrong way is debatable, but they are more informed. And how do we tune our creations to appeal to that audience is something which is food for thought, is something I think creates a huge change in the way we think about creating product. Any product. Even cinema before, I'll speak about my trade, was a communal gathering of people. It is still so, but it is seeing a vast change. You can kick back with your favorite pint in your own living room or your church or whatever the kind of audience that I'm addressing to. And you can watch something on Netflix. Now it's a personalized experience. You can pause it, you can get back to it. Does that relate to design? Does that relate to how we create jewelry? Is it something which is so generational? I remember my mother, I reference my mother a lot. Clearly I've been raised by one Wolfie woman. But yes, my mother used to talk about jewelry when she got wed, as Stri Dhan, it's a woman's wealth. It's pseudo dowry, but that's what they called it. Now, is it changing? Is that way of accepting jewelry in India through marriages, through ceremonies, is that changing? How is it changing? Are women more empowered at a younger age for the right reasons? Are they buying more on their own? Or is it still passed on through generations? These are questions we must ask, because these are questions which I think are not only pointed at your industry or my industry. I think these are global queries we must answer. And we must deal with the nomads. Now, we know that about 67%, which is 2/3 of the entire population, is projected to be urbanized, projected to live in cities. We, as a country, we are seeing a rapid change. A lot of rural people are trying to brush up their skills and trying to match with the city dweller, sometimes forgetting what made them that hardworking, what made them who they are, what is their anchorage. And that kind of heritage value, I think we must celebrate. Even if we stay in an 800 square feet apartment, leaving our farmland with 14 cows and 6 pigs, we must value where we come from. I think as Indians, if we do that, with the kind of richness which 5,000 years at least, I'm not going to be epics, but at least 5,000 years of cultural anchorage, I think we can sieve a global connection which will serve everybody well. Paula touched upon spirituality. I think it is in our DNA. I think it should be in the DNA of all things we create. I think it is our strong point. I think it is our USP. that we've always talked about seeking. We've talked about connecting to the higher light through our creation. Not necessarily God, but seeking and questioning what is beyond this. Why do we do what we do? I think that cultural platform that gives us that, we should all bow down to that culture, and even if we do move to pockets of congregated living, we must appreciate where we come from. Now this is something which I think we have created a lot of ruckus in our country for the right reasons, and we are moving towards a very healthy, accepting culture. I know that if my uncle was gay in 1981, he wouldn't talk about it at the dining table. It would be evident, but he wouldn't talk about it. Today, we can have a meal. He comes to India. He sits with every awkward elderly person in my family. We rejoice, chuckle, because that kind of familial conflict is always good for a filmmaker to observe. But the fact that we can all interact with pride, with equality, is something to be really proud of, I think. And if we speak about our culture, we have had Ardhanarishwar, we've had people who have been gender fluid in our epics, we've had characters who have decorated our books and theatres and all kinds of methods of expression, with their being half man, half women, with their being gay, with them being exploratory, curious, everything. Today is a time when we turn the clock back. Today is the time when we understand that inspiration in creation can come from everybody. Today is the time when we celebrate a man wearing jewelry. And we do, when a man gets married in India, in this place called Marwar, they wear diamonds. You guys must be aware. Our kings wore jewelry. But if today, being a straight man, I wear an earring because I like punk rock, I may be questioned by my beer hogging fella. And I shouldn't be, because that should be my choice. And I think there is an opportunity to create and galvanize that culture where we can also explore a big market. I'll keep it brief. We are all plagued by technology. We sometimes rejoice it. But it's an ocean you can't turn your back on. It's not something that, 2 decades ago, your grandfather would tell you, no, I don't want to send an email, I'll just write a letter. As romantic as that may be, and as much as you would want to write that one letter to that one special somebody, you'll have to write an email. Now, what is it doing? What is this mobile culture doing? Is it so that sometimes when you're by yourself, you are seeking inspiration, and all you find yourself doing is trying to look for it through your phone? Now, that may work for some people. As Paola, when she was addressing all of us, she also spoke about being able to dive into this universe of information and being able to discern and take out what we need from that as a skill. I would say something slightly more controversial, that it is definitely a skill, but it is also a skill to manage your technological engagement skill, etiquette. Because if you don't dissociate from something, how do you associate with it? It cannot become an addiction. If you're able to reflect on something, then only you're going to be able to engage with it. It's like a marriage. You can't do everything with that person. It has to be a partially overlapping Venn diagram. And I think the marriage, that mobile culture and technology that has come upon us, we must understand how much to ration, how to use it, and enable ourselves to create better, to interact better. Now this is something I deal with a little bit, but I hope you guys are fully attentive today. So now, we all do, I'm sure how many people have texted their friends, families, when this is happening. I'm sure a lot of you. Yeah, you have, right? And it's normal. That's how we are. We live in a time where we don't like something, we change the channel. Except if it's Indian cricket that we're watching. Maybe not you, but. So, now how do we deal with that? How do we deal with that through design, through our product, through our culture? How do we create, I'll use the word again, provenance. How do we create a piece of jewelry that I treasure, even if I don't wear it? How do we create a story about that rock which was found in a mine, whatever size it was, that makes me revere it? When De Beers, I think, if I'm not mistaken, came up with the line, post-war I, diamonds are forever, it was an advertising campaign. But today, without it being advertised, how do we find that communication? How do we drive that communication? That what you're doing has a value for a long, long time, if not forever. So, yeah, we've got to battle that. And in a time where something you design, you take 3 months to it can be copied, it can be knocked off in 7 days. Whether we stand here and complain about that or we keep innovating. I'm just going to talk about what I do a little bit, and I hope you find the congruency, the similarity in what you do, because that's the idea. Now, when there was a film which came, the first film that was made, I don't know if you're aware, was of this railway locomotive, a documentary. And the audience, much like you, was sitting in a theater. It was projected. They had never seen something like that. When the train started coming, they screamed. People ran. People started, helter-skelter that the train's going to come and hit them. It's not that they were unsmart people. People who had not seen something like that on a big screen before. From there, we went to talkies, silent cinema. From talkies to 2D, we went to 3D. Today, we stand on the cusp of a revolution. We stand on over-the-top entertainment. We have films which are being distributed to your mobile phones, to your televisions, to your computer screens. It's direct to consumer. Is there a parallel that you find in your industry? Anybody? Anybody? Do you see a parallel in the design industry?
It's okay to be wrong.
Yeah, sure.
I think Bluestone, I've seen the ads where they offer try at home and they get the whole suitcase of jewelry which you would like, and maybe if you don't like, it's not necessary to purchase, but they go back.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's like a try at home, like the jeweler coming to your home, giving you the trial, and there is no force to purchase also.
What's your name?
Dhruti.
Dhruti, I have a counter question because I'm very curious. And I hope I mirrored everyone's curiosity. Now, you may be okay with that, but somebody from a previous generation in the family, maybe your aunt, your mother, somebody else, are they taking to this idea of digitally interacting with the jewelry brand, or they still like the old jeweler coming home, spending 3 hours with them? And if not, or yes, how do we battle with this? How do you try and galvanize that opinion?
I think it's like a ongoing debate. But I also, I have seen visuals from the past where actually the jewelers for Maharanis and Maharajas would come and showcase their whole, premium collection to them. That was also a way which made them feel special, like how the previous speaker said, like limited edition. It's also making them feel special at one end, like it is for you.
Okay, fair enough. Anybody wants to add something to that? Anyone in fashion or design, please.
I want to add something to this point.
Please, sir.
In our buying scenario and in all buying patterns on stakeholders, what we found is that in our ecosystems, we have an influencer, we have a buyer, we have a consumer, and the decision makers. So it's always happened that out of that, maybe consumers is not the actually buyers or is not the decision makers. Decision maker is, as you told, that earlier generation peoples. So they are not acquainted with all this new era of buying procedures. So there is always a tendency of conflicts there. So when it happens that when consumers, decision makers and buyers all are in one persons, then this can be happen. Otherwise there will be always a little bit conflicts and still not acceptance of these things.
Actually, that's a good point that you're making, but that's what we call crack. That's why today we're having cracks. That's the name of the title. This kind of debate that we have, cultural debate between consumers, which most of the time are generally ahead of the traders. This is controversial time, and we are facing that. So whatever is the crisis that we are facing in terms of sales, distribution, designing the right product for the right people, this is an opportunity. So this is only a little seed that we are doing here, but there are many around the globe to really spread the culture where we are trying to become literate within the jewelry industry about digital era, which doesn't mean just having a phone, but really understanding the new value and how to. So I agree with you. Basically, we are saying that, but this controversy, it's where the opportunity lies. That's what we have to work on, and that's the leaders are those who will embrace the new culture and will act upon it. And it's not a matter of age, because some people might be young but old in their age, and some people might be demographically older but ahead of their game. Okay? So it's not a matter of age. Some people, it's all just that even though they're 20s and they have a phone, and the visionaries might be 70s and might be ahead of the game. It's taking the opportunity. It's cracks, the light going through and seeing the light.
Yeah. Very well said, Paolo. Now, how we can marry that to your industry as well? Changing consumption patterns across 125 years of theatre and entertainment. I just spoke about it a little bit already. Now, if someone who is an influencer on social media, on Instagram, who's used to fast fashion, is also looking for alternative jewelry, I don't know, moissanite or all these other stones, is there a challenge that we have, that we are able to present to them the importance of lasting, sustainable jewelry, fashion, film? If we do, how do we do that? What should be our communication channel where we are able to handle the consumption patterns? I mean, I'll talk about it, but I'd love somebody to share their opinion.
Yes. We have another 5 minutes, and then we have Narendra.
Yeah.
Okay.
Check. Well, I think the most important part is the short attention span you spoke of earlier. Right? But at the same time, people want more variety, more experiences, things they thought the previous generation could not afford, they wanted themselves. So if they can't go do it themselves, at least they want to see a visual of it. Like a lot of Indians are consuming American content today, Spanish content on Netflix. So one is it's delimiting boundaries, global boundaries. It is about new experiences. And a lot of places where people don't have roots, cultural heritage or history is very limited. Right from Spartacus to later, since you're from filmmaking, I'm giving such examples. A lot more shows are going about history and people are digging in because, as a soul, you want something to relate with, or what is your context in the
Let me quickly change that around. We have less time. So, sorry. So, maybe in a show, you see a piece of jewelry. It is desirable. Now you have to adhere to 3 different markets with 3 different target groups. How do you address that?
I think there are mega patterns. Definitely, you look at it like, especially you see Paula's book or many trends, sub-trends. There are fine lines, there are common patterns, and you get the feelers within it. And I think it's universal throughout the world. Like street culture has picked up world over. Small example. You know.
So I was going on the universal acceptance, the mass acceptance of megatrends, and how we can marry our creations to globally understandable moods and ideas to be able to penetrate a wider section of audience rather than those design sensibilities being localized, even though anchorage, as I said earlier, was very important. We've talked about this. I'm just going to screen through these. Yeah. Now, a lot of what we do today is bordering on the lines of invasive privacy being stolen, or as we like to call it, transparency. How does transparency in today's cultural exchange help us understand each other, understand the requirements that we have? How does it affect design? How does it affect our ways of thinking? If I am only wearing something which is an occasion wear, for example, if I buy a Narendra Kumar jacket or a Louis Vuitton pair of shoes, and I buy it for a ceremony, I will share it with 200 people on that evening. But if I take a picture of it, put it on social media, I'm probably interacting with 20,000 people already. What does that entail? That entails that the kind of investment that we had, or the kind of, pardon me for saying, the arrogance that we had for just building a design process has to be more dynamic. We have to keep innovating. We have to reinvigorate the process where the lead time to design is lesser. And what we are more focused on now, I think, is delivery and change, which is, I think, a mega trend across all creations globally. I'm going to let this speak because I think my time is up. We were going to talk about mindfulness, so I'm just going to touch upon this very, very briefly. Now, what is mindfulness? I'm here with you guys. I'm interacting with you guys, and you guys are giving me something in return. At the same time, there is a personality Venn diagram or a personality bubble that all of us have, which is unique. I like to watch a certain kind of sport. I like to eat at a certain kind of restaurant. I like to change, mismatch a couple of things. Now, when I'm doing so many things, there are few things that I pick as my favorite, which in turn makes my consumer behavior how it is. How do we identify that at a time when everyone's doing everything apparently? Everyone's on vacation on Instagram every week. Everybody's wearing high fashion labels without showing the labels. Everybody's consuming. You want to say something? Please. Yeah, you are. But trust me, I'll find 5 knockouts on Instagram in 5 minutes. So now there is something that we have to learn from. How do we keep these guys playing catch up with us? How do we keep creating constantly so that these people who are trying to rip off what we create are lagging behind? I'm going to leave you guys with the thought that all that we do comes from who we are, and it is true for every creation that we will ever create. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Risha. Your presentation is great, fantastic. I have two comments. One is that I think, first of all, thank you for the audience to start interacting. We need you to be active because it's up to you to make it more interesting. Just to put it through some code, actually he was giving you 5 extra minutes. I didn't have time. He said, no, I gave you this, but then he goes, give him 5 extra minutes, but now we can do it like that. I mean, it's like, you know, when you were doing, we were talking about fast fashion and being fast and all that, but there is something very important, slow acceleration. Right, Akash? I mean, part of being sustainable and ethical, it's also start working on quality design versus and product. So that will help also the world and they put, rather than coming out with all this fast design, with very good quality design or anything, we not so. So this is something that we have to think about it, and then designers and makers and marketers are thinking about. It's like, yeah, we are a mobile population, but also, like you said, something very interesting is like, in order to understand it, you have to also detach yourself from it. And that's the same for consumption. You know, consumption is changing, and Generation Z is changing also. They're buying less, they want to buy stuff that it's better. And so that doesn't mean that consumption will end, but maybe we'll do it differently, in a more ethical way. So the concept of fast fashion maybe is changing. It's about slow acceleration in terms of slow fashion, slow design, but slow doesn't mean less. I mean, less it means better. That's one thing. Another comment that I honestly disagree with the concept of high fashion. I think that high fashion is not just really to wearing a famous brand. You can be high fashion buying stuff from the streets, and it's the way you style yourself and make it high fashion. You can be couture, have a couture image based on your ensemble and the way you express yourself. And this is something, is a misconception that people has, including designers, that if wearing a Versace or an Iris Van Noten dress doesn't make you high fashion. You can wear something that is, I mix and match from Zara to Lanvin, Prada, and sometimes things are completely unbranded, but it's my brand, it's me as an individual, and I think that online communities are showing that being yourself and expressing yourself, either you are a gender fluid or not, in a very strong way, it's high fashion. It's like making a statement. So let's use high fashion for making a statement of who we are. That's it. But thank you for your presentation. Is an attitude, yes. Narendra, we need you on stage.